Right, so we've learned about the three pillars of JavaScript, events, DOM manipulation, and yesterday we talked about how to actually communicate with a server using fetch calls. Today we're going to put all those things together and make one single page application. This is what our final result should look like. Okay, not quite like that, because I forgot to do one thing. So the first thing we need to do is we need a server for this to communicate with. Rather than using an API, what I have here is a JSON file of a bunch of Pokemons. Oh, it's not here yet. I'm going to say that a lot just to annoy her when she gets here. But a bunch of Pokemon, and a sprite image, their name, and an ID. So this is just a regular, simple JSON file. We have a library that will called JSON server. That's going to enable us to kind of mock up a fake server. So if I do JSON server and tell it to watch a JSON file, great. It started up a server, localhost 3000, because this is Rails connected, I believe. And it's giving us the resource, a RESTful resource at /Pokemon. If I go to that in my browser, right, I'm running a JSON server, resources Pokemon. If I go to /Pokemon, I can just see all that JSON, just like in the APIs we've been seeing so far. And now that I can communicate with the server because it's existing, I have this app. Here are the things we need to try to do. We need to see all the Pokemon. I need the ability to add a Pokemon. Caterpie. All the URLs are going to follow this structure. I have no idea which one Caterpie is, but he's already there. Here, you want to do Pikachu?
Isn't it like Caterpie?
I don't know.
Isn't it like...
I'm Gen X, not a millennial. If you want to start talking Magic the Gathering, we can talk. I don't know, 1, 2, 3. And there's Pikachu. That's Pikachu. He's the one with the arms, right? You guys know Pokemon, it's just dog fighting, right? Like, that's what you're watching. But at any rate, tell me I'm wrong. Catch a pet and then make them fight each other? It's messed up. At any rate, so we have the ability to add in a Pokemon of our choosing with a picture. This should persist to the database, so if I reload it, it's still there. And we also want the ability to click on a Pokemon and delete it, murdering it forever. Again, persisting to the database. If I reload it, it's not there. Okay, so that's our goal for today. Let me take out my finished JavaScript and put back my nothing JavaScript. Okay, so here's our script.js, which right now has this very basic nothingness of just making sure the DOM content is loaded. I do this every time I include a new file or something like that because I've messed this up, right? The including a JavaScript file. I've messed this up more times than I can count. So the first thing I'm even going to do is just make sure I'm getting my JavaScript file correctly. Let's get our console. Great. So we're good so far. Let's take a look at the JSON server docs. Get those up. We're going to need those. Oh, it's an NPM package. Okay. Thought it was. Ugh, shut up with the cookies notice. Looking for, okay, here's how to run it, blah, blah, blah. And okay, here we go. Here's the basic routes we're getting. Of course, it will be with Pokemon instead of posts. But we should be able to get Pokemon, which we know from our mod 2 and that fun diagram we have memorized by now. This is an index of all of them. This will be a detail page for a single one. A post to /Pokemon should create a new Pokemon. Put and patch to edit, and delete to delete. Easy enough. What questions do you have? That should all be reviewed. Great. So when you're making a project, especially when you're up in your jobs, you know that first time you sit with the client who is saying what he or she wants you to build, or you're working with your boss and figuring that out, you'll often write user stories. Has Ann covered user stories with you? Yeah. Pretty basic, just kind of little sentences as to, as a user, what do you expect to be able to do? So let's write those out, just so we know what we're doing. Okay, as a user, I can see all the Pokemon. As a user, I can add a Pokemon with a form and render it to the page. And as a user, I can delete Pokemon by clicking on it. Okay, the goals of our app, just nice to outline this and make sure we have an order of steps that we want to be working on. A good thing to do, and Ann's going to drill this into your head, when you're thinking about tying these things together, here's an easy template to use. When, oh man, it didn't comment. Go, I'll do it by memory. When some event happens, I want to make this type of fetch call and manipulate the DOM in this way. Okay, so we fill in those blanks for each thing that we want to try to do just to keep ourselves organized. So for this first one, I can see all the Pokemon. So, well, what's the event that's going to happen that's going to enable me to see all the Pokemon? What's that? Well, what's the user going to do to see all the Pokemon? Yeah, when the page loads, what type of fetch call do you think we'll be making? Get. A get request to, what's my route? Pokemon. And render all the Pokemons to the screen. Easy enough? What questions do you have so far? Cool. So you could wrap everything in DOM content loaded and just have a big old mess of a method here. But I think we've learned from past programming, it's best to break these things up. So let's make a method that's going to get the Pokemon data from our server. Okay, so we'll make a function called gotta fetch them all. And let's see, what do I need to do? I'm going to make a fetch call to localhost 3000/Pokemon. Okay, and we'll chain on it then. What do I want to do with that data? Most often, you're going to be changing it straight to JSON. I am, thank you. JSON. And then that's going to give us back some data. And before we go any further, let's pause there to see what we've even got. Console.log data. And of course, I have to call the function. Gotta fetch them all. Great, there's our data. Let's take a look at it. Terrific. We have an array of JavaScript objects, each one consisting of an ID, the name, and the sprite. Terrific. Although at this point, I think I can name the word data a little better. Let's call this Pokemon array. And what do you think I want to do here? Let's take a guess. What should our next step be? What do you mean?
Create a new function.
We want a function called create Pokemon. I'm going to say render Pokemon, but okay. Pokemon. Okay. So render Pokemon array. So we could do this. This would work. And we could pass in the array, iterate over it, and then make a Pokemon card for each one. That would work, but it's limiting us to now saying this render Pokemon function is always going to take in an array, or I'd have to do some weird coding to make sure it doesn't. I think it's better. Pokemon. I think it's better if this takes in a single Pokemon, and up here we can do our for each, and call this method once for each Pokemon. Just in terms of organizing our code a little bit, and I know where we're going to go later, and I know we're going to need to call this method again for single Pokemon. I have that kind of future vision. Just call me Garnet. You're in mod 3. If you're not watching Steven Universe by now, like, come on. They're 10 minutes long. Listen, if I had to choose between Steven Universe and the future of my career, it's an easy pick. Steven Universe all the way. Patty LaPone's in it. Anyway, back to me. Okay, so let's take this. We'll do a little callback function. We'll do Pokemon array for each, which in turn takes in its own callback function. And for each Pokemon, we will render Pokemon. And these parentheses matching up, there's a lot of them. That's that, and that's extra, right? Is this extra? Nope, that's there, okay. Let's break it up a little bit. Hey, and again, let's not do too much at once. Let's just make sure we got our Pokemon. Great, same thing, but now one at a time. Here's our Pokemon with all the information inside of it. Questions so far?
Most of the time, the data will be coming over in an array, but not necessarily always, right?
Yes? Anne? Agree?
The question is, most of the time the data will come as an array.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know that. Maybe it'll come as an object, maybe it'll come as a number, maybe it'll come as a string.
Could it come as a single object, or would it be an array as a single object? Yeah, I guess you're right. It could be anything.
So, I mean, for Dog CEO, when you made a fetch call, you guys got back an object. For like this API, you guys made a fetch and you got back an array of objects. So I would always just check your assumptions. Do you really know your data shape?
Yeah, and I mean, even if it was most or almost always as an array, or even if you thought it was always, it's still worth double checking.
When I was working with APIs in Ruby, a lot of the times I would end up having nested arrays. Is there like an equivalent for flattening to do that in JavaScript as well? Like if you have multiple pages of arrays, is there some way you can flatten them?
Probably.
There's a built-in library for that.
Flatten JavaScript array. There you go. Is this built into, this is JavaScript basic, right?
Is it array.prototype.flat?
Yeah.
Yep, it's built in.
Yeah. So answer, yes. Of course, it's a lot more complicated than anything else. What's that?
You passed in infinity on line 14.
Yeah, that's neat. Cool. All right, great. So we've got our data that we can work with there. One other little interesting thing, just in case you see this. We know that Pokemon array is going to return individual pieces of data, which we're calling Pokemon. I can omit this. And this. And the parentheses, right? Yeah. And it still works. I hate this, but I'm pointing it out to you. Because Pokemon array or any array for each is going to return individual atomic pieces of data, that this is understood that that's the piece of data you're passing into this function. I think this is awful, but just in case you see this pattern, you'll know what it is. I still always like being explicit over implicit, but that's because I learned Python first and best.
Another way to think about it is just, so for each should take in a function, and that function should accept a Pokemon and do stuff with it. So this is great. The reason like just render Pokemon works is because render Pokemon, the function, is just a function that takes in Pokemon and then does stuff with it in case with this console logging. So you will see both patterns.
Yeah, don't do it though, it's awful. But you'll see it. Anne may disagree. I'd listen to her over me. Great. All right, so now let's actually render Pokemon. This should be making up the Pokemon card. So we'll start with, we have to grab that container, which I know is in my body. It's already set there with an ID of Pokemon container. That's going to be this jibber jabber. Let Pokemon container equal document. We could do get element by ID. Pokemon container. Make sure we got the right one. Let's rearrange these. These are annoying me. Is this where it was or no? There we go. Great. And there's my Pokemon container. Looks like I got the right one. Fabu. Keep going. And then we'll make a Pokemon card. Document dot create an element of a div. And we'll give it a title. H3. And set the text. And attach it. Pokemon card, append child, header, Pokemon container, append child, Pokemon card. Okay, so at this point, if we did it correctly, we should see the names of all our Pokemon rendered onto our DOM. Woo! Questions so far? Should pretty much be all reviewed. There's not too much new here. It's just tying all the pieces we've seen together. All right. And now we need the image. So let Pokemon image equal document dot create element image. And we'll set the source. Equals Pokemon.sprite. And append that child. Let's test that. We should see our images. Great. Of course, the styling isn't designed well yet. I already have some CSS in an external style sheet put right here. And I can see, I just know this already, that if I add the class card to my Pokemon, then it'll render correctly. So we could do, where'd we go? Pokemon card dot class name equals card. Beautiful. There's a slight issue with how I just did that. Anyone know what it is? Pokemon class name equals card. What was wrong with how I did that? Yeah, Caleb.
So I think you'd rather do .classlist.add because it'll add on card to the existing class name versus this way we'll like clean and just make it only card.
Exactly. It's better to add the class name card because there might be some classes already on here. Now, I can look at this and say, listen, I just created the card. I know there's not, but, you know, why not get in the good habit? Class list. Dot add card. Make sure it still works. And there we go. First user story done. What questions do you have?
Yeah, is there any way to, on line 27, when you're creating the development, is there any way to create that with a card, or do you have to just be really granular with your steps? You create it and then.
I don't think so. Let's see. JavaScript create div with class. Doesn't look like it. You know of anything to do that?
It might be more effort than it's worth. You could check on a few things if you're really familiar with everything's return value, but probably possible, probably worth more trouble than just to write it out.
Was that syntax in one of the labs? I know I've seen it somewhere. I was trying to think of it.
I know document.createElement can take it as a second argument options, but I don't know those options off the top of my head.
Options. Okay, single property is. Attribute, use value. It looks like you can just give it this other element, not necessarily the class. This new element would be giving an. Oh, okay. So let's see. Curious. Create element. What if we do class name? Class name. Nope. And what if we say class? Nope. Yeah, it's not. Does not seem to be working. What if I do? Oh, maybe it has to be a string. Nope. Is it just this word is? Is that specific to it? I thought I saw that up here. Yeah, and value is the tag name for a custom element previously defined. Okay, yeah. So this is to do with custom elements. It doesn't look like it's for class names. So yeah, if there is, I don't know it, but Anne's probably right that it would be more trouble than it's worth. Good question. Other question. Is there a question in the back? All right. So there's our first user story. Let's work on our second user story. As a user, I can add a Pokemon with a form and render it to the page. Let's put this down. I wouldn't necessarily put these as actual comments on your methods. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's good for us right now. As a user, I can add a Pokemon with a form and render it to the page. Okay, who wants to raise their hand and tell me if you think you can fill out our little template with what our user stories should be when mm-hmm. Let's stick to our template. So I want to make what kind of fetch call? To Think of your RESTful routing. The slash Pokemon, yep. And how do we manipulate the DOM? Like what changes should we see on the DOM? Don't overthink it. Yeah. And add a new Pokemon card. Great. Okay, so when we use that, fill out the form and click submit. I'm going to just simplify this a little bit. Submits the form. I want to make a post fetch to slash Pokemon and add a new Pokemon card. All right. So first, we're going to have to add an event listener to that form. We could grab the form up here. I'm going to make a separate little function to get the form. Get form. Let's double check our HTML. All right, there's just the one form in the page, so I can just grab that. That's fine. Be document.query selector form. And we'll return that. Now I can say get form dot add event listener on submit. That's its special type of event. Why would submit be better than just adding a click button, click event handler on the submit button?
If you press enter, it wouldn't notice it.
Exactly, right? There are multiple ways to submit a form. Most commonly clicking on submit and just hitting enter. And we want both of those to be accepted. Yeah, Caleb.
Why? What was the purpose of the get form function? Like, why wouldn't you just put a weird, like, what's in the body of get form? Why wouldn't you just put that in the event listener?
I'm going to be using this multiple times. It would work. I think that would be acceptable if you just grabbed it every time you needed it. I'm just cleaning up my code a little bit and trying to stick to the single responsibility principle. You'll see both patterns. Okay, we'll add an event listener on submit. We'll say, I don't know, what do we want to call it? What did I call it in my notes? Submit. Great. And let's build that out. Good. Let's check it. Okay, I hit submit. You see, it appeared real quick and went away. And my form is reloading. That's probably not what I want. I don't want the page to reload every time I hit submit. What's going on here? I know, raise your hand if you think you know. Go ahead, Greg.
You have to override the default action.
Yeah, so submit buttons are already built to send that information somewhere and render a new page, which is usually what we want for submit, but not in a single page application. So we want to undo that. We can pass in a parameter called event. It can be called anything you want, but you'll probably see it as event or E. And what we want to do is event dot prevent default and call that method. This will prevent whatever should normally happen when this event is clicked or triggered rather. Let's test it. Great. Page doesn't reload. We can see that the form just stays there and we're good to go. What questions do you have? All right, so now the post fetch is going to be slightly more complicated than our get fetch. So let's do the easy part first. So we know it's just a fetch to http://host 3000 Pokemon. We're going to need to tell it that it's a post somehow because it's default a get. And we're probably going to have to pass in some information, right? We need to say what we're actually posting. And we may need some other things as well. Let's check the docs. Okay, so why did you use post as your data type? jerk. Let's look for post fetch calls. Feeling it down too far. I know it's here. There we go. Okay, it's good to know that a post, put, or patch request should include a content type application JSON header to use the JSON in the request body. Otherwise, it'll be a 200 OK without making changes to the data. Fine. And where's the example? And I know I saw it just yesterday.
I usually just go to the NPN to look at a fetch example.
What's that?
I usually just look up fetch examples on NPN. Like, using fetch NPN or something. Oh, NPN.
Oh, I thought that was odd. Ah, yes, that's what I was looking for. Thank you. Sending a request of credentials, uploading JSON data, using fetch to post JSON encoded data. Okay, great. So we have the URL, they have the data as an object, and they're saying fetch to the URL, and then including this. We'll need method post, body. We need to stringify the data. I'll come back to that in a second, and these headers. So when we are sending data through the interwebs, we really only have the option of sending strings. I'm going to want to send an object. Let Pokemon equal name Pikachu sprite www.pikachupicture.com, whatever. Right, this is what I want to actually send through. But I need to make this a string first. So JSON has a method called stringify, which will take in an object or something else, and turns it into a string. So I can send this string across the internet. It'll be intercepted on the other side and processed how we want it to be. Build that out, and then I'll take your questions. All right, so we already did the URL. We need this option hash. We need method is post, body, JSON, stringify. Oh, we don't have the data yet, do we? All right, we'll have to come back to that. And headers, which is another object of that. Okay, close that, closed that. Oops. Close the fetch, close that. Great. So we still need to get what the data is. Let's put in a debugger here. Figure out what the data is. Okay, so Pikachu again. Submit. How can we get this form data? Who thinks they know? Anyone? Anyone? First we have event.target. Let's look at that. All right, that gives us the form. That's fancy. Any idea what to do from there? Event.target.value. Undefined. Does the form have a value?
No, only its fields.
Only the fields have a value. Thank you, Anne. Well,
Do you have to go into, scroll up a little bit, what's the IDs? Yeah, you have to do like event target dot sprite input and name input.
So we have an ID of name input and an ID of sprite input. Yeah, we can do this one of two ways. They're both acceptable. I could, since I know exactly what I'm looking for, I could say query selector, name input, dot value, and there we have that. Or you could also, we have the form. If I index this, like 1, that actually returns the input field in the first position. 0 would be the name, so then I could do dot value there. Both are acceptable.
Those indexes are just like the children, right?
Yep, just the children in order.
Why do you not want to do that because the index might change?
Yeah, I can see that. I would agree with you. I think I would be more comfortable personally doing it this way. I mean, in general, if your HTML changes up, your JavaScript's likely going to need to change as well. But you're right. I think this way would keep it a little more secure and a little less prone to change. So sure, we can use that.
Could you do event target for each? Because it's a node, and not a true array, it's a node list or whatever it's called.
Something like that. For in. I personally like being explicit better and grabbing them each. It's me. All right, so we'll say let new name equal that. Let new sprite equal, what was it? Sprite input, image input? Sprite input.
So if you have a form with like 15 different fields, you just have to do query selector 15 times.
Yes, do you see a better way around that, Ann? Yeah, probably.
I haven't really committed that to memory because realistically, this gets significantly easier once you introduce real frameworks. But now, this is more than enough.
Okay, and now we can make up our data object. Let data equal name, new name, sprite, new sprite. And then let's test it. No change in the DOM, which if you think about it makes sense, but let's take a look at our JSON file. Hey, there's Pikachu. Notice the ID has been done for us automatically. JSON server actually won't accept, it will accept an ID in a post request if for some reason you wanted to force it, but if the ID has already been taken, it's going to throw it out, and I really can't think of a reason you'd ever want to explicitly set an ID. What questions do you have so far? Yes, Will.
Is there a reason the ID is the first like value? And I guess that was the seed data, and then the ones you created, it looks like it's the last value.
Yeah, the order doesn't really matter because objects are unordered. Why it chose to do it that way, I couldn't tell you. I'm gonna assume it's because the ID got designed after it took in the data. That would be my guess. These are the first things that happen, and then it assigns an ID when it saves it. But it doesn't make any difference. These are equivalent. Other questions? Cool. So now we have to actually get this guy onto the page. Where'd my code go? So I can say, okay, I've made this fetch call, I've written it. Now, I'll take that response and let's see what that gave me back. Console log response. Notice if I reload my page, Pikachu's there just as I expect. And let's add a new one. Someone give me another Pokemon. Mewtwo. And give me a number between 1 and 700.
I think he's 142.
If you're right, I'm going to throw you out.
He's somewhere around 140. 150. 150.
Also, when it becomes, it's interesting.
Okay, let's see what we got back. Great, lots of fun stuff. Not too helpful for us here. We got the body. Can you? Oh, that's not helpful. Let's turn that into JSON and see what we got. JSON dot then JSON console log JSON. There's that guy. What else do we got? All the main Pokemon I know are already here. And the Pokemon. Oops. I hit back instead of opening the console. Let's try another one. Jenny, what number do you want to be?
235.
Okay. Oh, hey, that's pretty much, it gives us back exactly what we needed. The object that it just created. Her name, her sprite, and her ID. So that's easy enough. We can make that work. I'll just take that JSON and let's rename it something more appropriate. And now I can just call render Pokemon Pokemon. Let's test it. Zoom tight. All right, there's Jenny. Joseph here? No, Joseph's not here, right? What number do we want to make Joseph? Oh, Joseph, what number do you want to be? You're behind a column. I can't see you.
72.
Ta-da! There's Joseph. Yeah, well.
Go back to the code. So like where you just changed JSON to Pokemon on line 58,
Mm-hmm.
make that like that second, then that JSON can just be any name.
Yep.
It's gonna be variable.
Yep. So this is a placeholder for whatever got returned from this. I can call it whatever I want. Did you listen to yesterday's lecture? Yeah, well, yeah, we know. You'll see. I think there's a problem with our page, though. Let's do it one more time, see if anyone can pick up on the problem. I'll be a Pokemon. No, I only have one choice. 27. There I am. Oh, I'm adorable. Anyone see a problem with our page? Yeah, the input fields don't clear out. Not the end of the world. It still works, but that's not a good user experience. Do you know how to clear out the input fields? Yeah, we just want to reset the form. And since I already have my handy dandy method to get the form, I'll reset. Oh, thank you. I've been in Ruby too long. Someone give me another Pokemon. What number do you want to be?
123.
Oop. Our form didn't reset. And I will come back to your question, whatever it is. Why didn't our form reset? Oh, you mean before I tried it?
Yeah.
Maybe not. There we go. Reset now. Thank you. Brilliant. Kind of looks like him. Okay. Caleb, what was your question?
So in the headers part of the fetch call, so content type dictates like what kind of format you're sending the data into the thing, right? But don't you also need accept to let it know what kind of data you're accepting back, or is that not necessary?
Apparently not according to the documentation.
It'll depend on your API. Like, as you guys get better at developing, you use third-party APIs, you're really gonna have to read those API docs and understand what their requirements are. But also do the docs for JSON server, just specify content.
And luckily, all third-party API docs are really clearly written in verbose, so you'll be fine.
Yeah, because in our lecture, we were told to put offset application JSON.
Yeah, it depends on what's necessary. It wasn't necessary in this one. There's lots of different headers that can be put in, lots of different options for this fetch call. This is what's necessary for this API.
Why is it application/JSON?
I don't know. It's just what it is. I've never questioned it. Do you know him?
I don't really know either. I just know that when I read API docs, that's what it tells me to do.
Yeah, it's like this is.
There's like application/XML, there's like string data.
Yeah, but why the word application specifically is included, I'm not sure. Probably just some legacy thing that we're stuck with, if I had to guess.
Four decisions in the 1990s were made now.
Just curious if it'll work without it. Give me a number, Charlie.
4?
He's already there.
221.
Good time. It didn't work. Didn't work. All right, great. Well, seems like now's a good time to build out that delete function, so we can get this poor undefined Pokemon gone. Crime against nature. Did I miss something? I feel like I missed something. I got everything. Got it. Yep, delete the Pokemon. All right. Who wants to fill in our user story for the delete Pokemon? Let's move this down here. All right, as the user, I can delete a Pokemon by clicking on it. What is our template? Raise your hand, tell me what we got here. When, what happens? Go ahead, Will.
When click, I want to make
Clicks on.
Pokemon image. I want to make a post request.
Why?
You're deleting, so you're like submitting a request to the.
We have some other options besides getting posts.
Oh, wait, this is destroy.
What's that?
Is it destroy or delete?
Delete.
That's right.
You could totally make this work with a post request, right? But it would be annoying, and the API is expecting this delete, and we'd have to work around it, which would be more trouble than it's worth. Okay, keep going. We're gonna make a delete call, fetch call to what?
To the
What route?
Pokemon/Pokemon
Pokemon/ID,
and then it deletes that from off
and removes
the page.
Pokemon from the page. Teeny problem I have with this: when a user clicks on a Pokemon image, I want to make a delete fetch to Pokemon ID and removes Pokemon from the page. Does it have to be on the image?
Pokemon call.
Yeah, on the card. I think we want, if someone clicks here, and they'd expect it to delete. So let's fix that. Just clicks on Pokemon card.
Oh, I have a quick comment.
Yes.
Go to the JSON server docs,
The JSON server docs.
and you can scroll up and click on routes. Yeah. So if you guys need a refresher on RESTful convention, or RESTful routing, JSON is a tool that uses rest routing. You guys are going to be using JSON Server a lot in your lab, so if you are ever lost, please like read these docs to understand what the results are.
Documentation is your friend, except when it's not. Your frenemy, let's say that. Okay, great. So let's build that all out. Function, delete Pokemon. Great. So let's see. We know we're going to need to make a fetch call to http://localhost 3000 Pokemon ID. So we're going to need a way to get the ID of this Pokemon. Let's see what we got so far. Let's look at our page. Oh, right. Front-end development. Okay, here's a card. There's no ID here, so that's not super helpful. How are we going to get the ID? What should we do? Hint. Can't get something that's not there.
Hey, there's lots of ways to do this. You know, I was wondering because I think on when we did like parent labs and stuff, we grabbed the whole card and just like dot remove and invoke the remove method.
Sure, and we could totally do that to remove it from the DOM, but we need to make this fetch call, otherwise it's not going to persist. Yeah, removing from the DOM, that's something you've done already. But somehow we need this ID.
Search for it by name, maybe.
Okay, so what that would entail making a call to the server, looking for something by name, getting the ID, then making another call to the server to actually remove it. It would work, but if it's a slow server, we've really expanded our load time. But the problem is that we can't get something that's not there, maybe we should have put it there in the first place. Wouldn't it be helpful if this card somewhere in the HTML had an ID? Let's build it. So let's go back to our card maker. Because we saw when we got this Pokemon, it had an ID attribute. So we can just say, when we make the Pokemon card, let's just, that's wrong. Pokemon card dot ID equals, now we could just say Pokemon ID, right? This will work. Okay, ID 1 right there. I think there's a problem with this approach. What problem do you see? This is not a JavaScript problem so much as an HTML problem. What do we know about IDs? They have to be unique, which right now these are. What are the chances I'm going to need to use this number 1 somewhere else, right? It's also not super descriptive. So this will work for our purposes, but I think it's going to be a little better if we give this ID Pokemon 1 or something like that to be a little more descriptive. Isn't too hard. We'll just use some string interpolation. Pokemon ID. Test that again. Great. Pokemon 1, Pokemon 2, Pokemon 3. Now we have all these IDs. We can get them. Back down here. So we can use that event again. And let's just put in the debugger. Oh, that's the undefined image, right? That's fine. Not hitting my debugger. Why not? Ah, right. Never called the function. We got to add that event listener. Now we have 2 times we can add event listeners. Who remembers what they are? in general? When can event listeners be added?
When the DOM is loaded.
When the DOM is loaded.
Create the element.
And when we create the element, which one do you think makes more sense here? When we create the element, right? Because when the DOM is loaded, those elements don't exist. So we couldn't attach anything there. So when we do this, let's just add on our event listener, Pokemon card, add event listener, on click, delete Pokemon. Just test it. Great. We have our event, event.target. Is the H3 Ivysaur? That's not really what I wanted. I wanted the whole card. Let's try it again. Okay, event.target. Oh, this time it's the image. Also not what I wanted. No, forget what I was about to say. Also not what I wanted. I want the whole card. How do I click on just the card? Maybe if I click on the outside. All right, that one worked, but that's certainly not something I want to expect my user to do. Hey, only click on the white space. Don't actually click on the image or the title, right? That would be kind of foolish. What should I do instead? Anyone know?
Should event listener be asked? Wait, can you go back to the code?
Event listener's on the whole card.
Can we be grabbing? Do we need to be grabbing the parent element of something?
Well, we could try that, but then we'd have to like specifically add it to the image and the title and the card and figure out how to bubble up to the card for each one. And also imagine if the card had many different elements in it, many nested elements in it. Could be real complicated real fast. We have another, what?
Can you pass an argument to delete Pokemon or the Pokemon card?
The Pokemon card. Maybe?
Could.
Would that work?
You could, but Paul's gonna show you.
Yeah, there's an easier way. I think that would work, but that seems complicated. We have another method on event called current target. And that's always going to be the thing that the event listener is attached to. Doesn't matter if I click on the image. Oops, don't open my text messages in front of everyone, please. Event.target was the image, but event.currentTarget is still the card. So that's what we need. And the card has the ID on it, which we'll get in a moment. Okay, let card equal event.currentTarget. This maybe isn't necessary to split it up, but I like it. And then we need to get the ID. So let ID equal card.id. Let's just see what we have so far. Sweet. What am I doing wrong? Event.
Where do you call delete Pokemon?
Great. Click on that. Event.currentTarget is not a function. Why are you lying to me? There we go. You're a penny. Back on track. And we can see right now, ID is what we wanted so far, Pokemon 2. But we just want that number part. How should we get that? Should we just get that integer? Well, we could do that, but that's going to get the last digit. What if this were a 3-digit number? Yeah. We know how it's constructed. We'll split it on the dash. Whoops. No, come back. Stop it. Great. And then we can just index to get the second part of it. Great. No, because it's actually going to interpolate it into this string anyway. ID. Bugger. All right, now we need to make this delete call. Let's check those docs and see what a delete request needed. Where'd my docs go? Okay, delete. Oh, it was in this one, right? No, come back. Okay, here's all the possible ones, but that's not what we need here. Let's look at the JSON server. I think that'll be more helpful. Delete. If you make post, put patch or delete request, change will be automatically and safely saved. Great. Request value, blah, blah, blah. ID value is not mutable. Post patch or patch must include content type JSON. All right, doesn't look like delete requires much more than actually just making the request. And of course, we'll need to tell it it's delete. So we'll do a fetch, and we just have to pass in method delete.
You use backticks on that string interpolation.
Thank you. Okay, nothing changed in the DOM, but that makes sense. We didn't do that yet. Let's check our data. Where'd you go? And it is indeed gone. If I refresh the page, sorry, Charlie, you're gone. All right, so all we have left is to actually remove it from the target, from the page. And since we already have the card, event dot current target dot remove.
But why was it gone?
It was gone because I refreshed the page. So it was no longer in the data. So when I reloaded the page and built all the Pokemon, that Pokemon was no longer there. Yeah, Caleb.
This isn't that question, but so I thought an API is essentially like just a third-party source of data that you're using, right?
Yes, but they've built out some ways to interact with it as well.
Yeah, but like so when you're building the delete function, I know you want to delete it from the right area of the page, and that makes sense. But why would you want to delete it out of the API?
So in this case, so I'm sorry, an API is not necessarily third party. It might be your own API, working with your own database. In this case, it is. My database is right here.
So is it just for this example, or API is also acting as a database?
Not just for this example, that could be often.
And what I don't like, if you were grabbing this from another site and you're using like their data, why would you want to delete? And someone wants to delete it, like user wants to delete the Pokemon off the page. Why would you want to go in the API and take the Pokemon out of it?
So I think the question you mean to ask is not why would you want to delete it, but why would I, as the owner, allow you to delete it, right? And I wouldn't. And I would have control over that. I could deny delete requests, and I certainly would if this were just an open API to everybody. Right now, delete requests are allowed because I want them to be allowed. You could do something like maybe you can only delete if you are logged in as an admin or whatever you need to do. Yeah, you wouldn't expose your entire API for anyone to make changes. Was there a hand grab?
No, but well, could you go to code? So to delete the Pokemon, you're doing event current target remove. Could we just call remove on card?
Oh, true. I did already grab it. I don't think it makes a difference. Let's test it. Bye, Bruno. You're all gone. Murder you all. One thing to note. This is called optimistic rendering. What happens if my fetch call fails? Something happens with the server and it doesn't succeed. What's going to happen to the card? I think it'll still stay. How many people think it'll stay? How many people think it'll remove?
It'll remove, but come back on refresh.
It'll remove but come back and refresh. So kind of splitting the difference. All right, let's find out. So I will take my server down. If I take my server down, they won't load anymore, will they? Reload the page. Now bring it back up. Oh,
Well, no.
Yes.
So bring it back up.
reload the page, then kill it.
Kill the server. Kill a Pokemon.
Okay, server's now down. If I try to kill a Pokemon by Joseph, it does delete. Let's bring the server back up. And Joseph is spared. So yes, who was it? Was that you, Will, that said it? Adam said it? Yeah. So it does still hit this card.remove and removes the card, but our data didn't persist because this fetch call failed. And that's optimistic rendering. We're optimistically saying, hey, I think my fetch call is going to be fine, so make this change to the DOM. And that can be a good thing sometimes, depending on what you want your user experience to be. Maybe you're in the middle of your app is a game, right? And you don't want the game to crash. You'd rather just not save the high score. So, okay, you can still play and whatever and keep going, just nothing's going to persist. Sorry, your high score is gone or whatever. The credits, ruples you earned during that game are gone. Or we might want to do pessimistic rendering. How do you think we do pessimistic rendering? If we don't make this fetch call, we don't want anything to happen. Well, a catch is part of it, but where am I going to put this part? Where am I going to put the good stuff before we get to the bad stuff? Inside the fetch as a .then, right? .then, an arrow. Okay, kill my server. Kill my server. Get rid of Bulbasaur. Does not delete. Right? Saying, hey, this fetch call has failed. Do I get any information down here? Yeah. You can see that the fetch call has failed, so it does not delete. And yeah, we can put a catch on there. Catch. Alert. Server error. Let's test it. Okay, kill my server. Goodbye Bulbasaur. Server error. There you go. Fully functional, single page application. What questions do you have? As soon as I get 2 questions, I'll end the lecture.
Would you normally need headers for the post too?
Would you normally need headers? So it's going to depend on the documentation. So this npm JSON server app said, hey, if you want to make a post, you got to include these headers. There are lots of different types of headers that there could be. This is the one it needed.
I actually went through the delete.
For the delete, no. It said the delete did not require any headers. So it was fine.
So back in Ruby, when we hit an error, we would have to update the status of the page with a for a 1 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Would we be doing that with the catch too? Errors here?
You mean like the response code?
Yeah.
Well, I think the page is still loading, right? You could. I don't know if it would be helpful. It's your API that you want to return that server error, right? Probably no one's interacting with this website programmatically. That would actually be very challenging since it's all front-end rendered. Cool, good questions. Any others?
Can you go back to so what's the difference between event.target and current target?
Event.target is the thing you clicked on.
Yeah.
Event.currentTarget is what the handler is attached to. Sometimes those will be the same thing, but not always if elements are nested inside each other. Okay, we should probably just do a quick regression test, make sure we haven't broken anything. Okay, Pokemon still load. Give it one last Pokemon. Trevor. Someone give me a 3-digit number. What do we want to make Trevor? 42. There's Trevor. Great. He's a bat. And we can delete. Goodbye, Pikachu. Oop, server error. That's not what I wanted. Good thing
We
we.
need a pass to a function, a pass function to that cache, but it's being invoked regardless every time. Do that cache. Drop it there.
There we go. Kill all Pokemon. Ta-da! All right, and there you go. What do they have on target next?